with Boundless Embodiment. Welcome to episode 11 of the Boundless Embodiment podcast. Today, I got a special guest coming out from Colombia. This is Nico Canon. Nico is a coach. Now, you coach men and women or just men, Nico?
Mostly men.
Mostly men. So he's a consciousness coach for men. And I'm really excited to have him. I've actually been following him on Facebook as like a digital follower for the last few years as I've been on my own journey. And I love a lot of his content. It's just very deep and spot on. And I'm excited to have him on today. So welcome, Nico.
Thank you, Ruth. Thanks for having me.
So I'd love to start just by, introducing to the audience a little bit about your journey. Like what even got you into the space you're in right now?
All right. So I'm gonna share the super condensed version, but so I grew up, I was born and raised in Colombia, the times of the cartels, right? Pablo Escobar, all the big drug lords, which was quite a chaotic time here, especially for parents who just had kids, because you go to school one day and then say one of your classmates is missing, and he just happened to be, or she just happened to be walking by a place where one cartel decided to set up a bomb and blew up a whole building just to kill one of their enemies. Or maybe the other guy will come with half of like face burnt and a glass eye because there was a lot of collateral damage, let's say. So which led to my parents being quite over controlling and overprotective, which I resented a lot, but now I can appreciate where it was coming from. So I grew up extremely shy, to the point that one time I watched a movie where there was a kid that was really like self-conscious and quiet and had a hard time socializing, but his mind was very bright and had, they will show the whole universe inside of it. And I asked my dad, well, what it was, and he said, oh, he has autism. And then I researched what autism was, and then I thought, I think I'm autistic, because I thought I don't want anyone to find out, but I think I have this thing that this kid from the movie has, because that's how I felt, like a whole universe in my head, but a very lack of social skills, comfort. I was very, very, very shy. Then fast forward to puberty, that became quite a nuisance, because I loved women, and at the same time I was scared of people in general, to look people in the eye. If a woman will talk to me, I will like literally shake. If she was pretty, I would stutter quite literally. I could not form a few sentences. And I really disliked that, because I felt very limited, and I felt that I wanted to do something about this. So when I finished high school, I moved to Canada, which is now where my home is based, between Canada and Colombia. And I thought, nobody knows me here, so I can be where I want to be. And from all the movies, I thought the guy who is cool and people like, and who is social and the girls like, is usually the frat guy, like the bad boy, which was somewhat I don't know if to call it well timed with the pickup industry when it blew up.
Yeah.
So those days I learned about pickup, and I thought, wow, this is something you can practice, you can get better at. You don't have to be born cool or a funny kid to get women. Which led to the beginning of my, well, not the beginning, but a meaningful part of my self-development journey, which was quite toxic, actually, fueled by a lot of inauthenticity, a lot of pretense, a lot of trying to play a game, the game. For a couple of years, I was the asshole, the frat guy, the drunken guy. That was my persona, and it provided quote unquote results. Like I connected with women, but they were very toxic relationships. I know the kind of women that I was genuinely in love with or seduced by at a deeper level.
Mm-hmm.
Then I went to rehab. It's called like that, where I realized it was quite misogynistic and ugly. And I found our Samurata. I don't know if you're familiar or the people watching this, is the work of San Purion,
Yep.
which is a lot of people recovering pickup artists come there to actually like lose all the baggage from a lot of the nonsense that we were force fed by the gurus of that time.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that was a transformation into having healthy, loving relationships, right? Like being an honest man and understanding that I don't have to pretend to be somebody else to be liked by women or by people in general. Soon after that, I was invited to become a coach for their team. So I spent a couple of years traveling with them as an assistant coach. And I realized the more men that I worked with, I realized that relationships are maybe one of the biggest pain points that we experience. Maybe relationships and money, but I think relationships hurt a lot deeper.
Mm-hmm.
And I couldn't avoid seeing that there was a substantial part of the dysfunction that came from far before uh, their first relationship,
Mm-hmm.
right? Proverbially speaking, like mommy and daddy issues and childhood trauma and ways in which we grow up that determine how we show up, determine how we sacrifice our authenticity in exchange for connection, how we crave approval, validation from other people, from women specifically. And a few years after working on that, I had a really, I don't want to call it horrible, but a really difficult breakup where I thought, at the moment that I thought I understand everything, I understand the dance between men and women, how it can flow, and I felt that I know it all when it comes to dating and relationships. Then my relationship spiraled down into utter chaos, like, as ugly as it can probably get in every way. And I thought, what? It made me consider a lot of things. The main one is who am I? What am I teaching men if my own relationship is so ugly and I'm in so much pain and she's in so much pain and this is torture for the three of us. And I thought I knew things. I thought that, I'll be dedicating my life for years to being a good man. And suddenly with the fact that I may not be as good as a man as I thought. Mm. So I realized that there was something a lot deeper that I was not even aware of that was ruling my personal relationships. And until I dealt with that, I didn't want to teach anybody because I felt, wow, the best any of my students can get is, if they're working with me, is to get to my same point, the same level as I am. And then on their own, they can grow past that. But I thought this is not a place where I want anyone to get to in that moment. Because sure, they can have a lot of sex, a lot of variety, a lot of adventure, but it's going to collapse. And there's a lot of pain that is caused along the journey.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, the journey became one of understanding that there was a lot of dependency because I had outsourced my ability to feel loved. Therefore, with this woman, I felt really loved. She was very loving. And when she was not there, I craved it in a way that was not healthy. And
Yes.
the same happened for her.
Mm-hmm.
So I told myself several years ago, I said, next year, I want to learn how to love myself. Even though it sounds silly, it sounds cliche, like one of those posters
Mm-hmm.
from Instagram girls staring out into the sunset saying, love yourself. And me, I hated those platitudes. I still do to a big degree, but I felt this has to be full before I can be in a relationship where things can blossom in a beautiful way.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when I would say my spiritual journey um, continued in a way that was more clear. That was the day when I started. I thought, hey, the first thing is I've never spent enough time with myself to actually know, like, how can I love myself I'm always doing something, working, being with people, doing something for other people. And my free time or my me time is partying, is watching a movie, even reading a book, no matter how good the book. My me time had always been full with stuff to do.
Mhm.
I realized, well, it's hard to love somebody that you don't spend time with. So around the same time, I was invited to a vision quest, which is 4 days and 4 nights of uh, fasting in solitude in the middle of a mountain, guided by a shaman. So I thought, okay, that seems like a good amount of time doing nothing, not even eating, to spend by myself, just understanding who am I, and can I love that which is behind being busy and behind all the distractions.
Mhm.
And I would say that kicked off a deeper journey where I understood it's like my life was a tangled mess of a lot of stuff, and then I could understand, wow, where the dysfunctions came from, and and also how much I had been running away from being. I feel that when you speak about embodiment, boundless embodiment, surrender, presence, in essence, is that can I surrender to the moment, can surrender fully into who I am without needing to change it to be perfect or to mold it into the way my mind wants it to be. So for me, that was maybe a first experience of that, a first glimpse of making peace with the moment and with myself, which then it continued on a search that led me to ayahuasca, plant medicine here in Colombia.
Mhm.
And that was another intense exploration, understanding that there were many things I didn't know that I didn't know
Yeah.
that were completely ruling my life. I thought I was free, I'm making good money, I am in good shape. I showed up to the ayahuasca retreat thinking, my life is fine. I don't know why I'm here, but anyways, just curiosity. And then I left feeling like, wow, I didn't know how much my life was ruled by a lot of dysfunction. And it was not the dysfunction that is evident, like, oh, I'm lazy, or I have fear of speaking to women, or doing this, or taking risks. But the dysfunction that is so subtle that we don't even consider or realize that there's dysfunction happening, right?
Mhm.
Then and then in that moment I understood that the work that I was doing with relationships goes way deeper, and that the core of that disconnection from the self, from the true self, not from the identity, is what creates a lot of the pain, the karma, the trauma that we then experience and relive consistently. So I don't like to have us anything. So then I spent a couple of years just, well, the last 2 years specifically, like living with a shaman in the mountains, and drinking medicine up to like 12 times a month, and just really surfing the edge of what felt to me like life and death and sanity and insanity, to understand in a deeper way what's at the core of who I am, of this life. And also to understand how can I serve people that come here. To In that community there will be, women that are coming that were raped by their fathers, and men who had been criminal, had killed people, lived on the street for 40 years, and everything and everyone that I was maybe judged and stayed away from my
Mhm.
life, because there was so much darkness around them, and so much heaviness around their life that they had lived. Suddenly I found myself welcoming that and coming close and asking myself, can I hold space for this person that I maybe in my mind thinks they're past the point of healing or transformation, and I'm being proved wrong. um, so that's my journey summed up right now. My work is a mix between, I call it grounded spirituality, which is no woo sit here manifesting stuff, but actually what is like the daily habits, ritual steps we can take to ground a spiritual experience, um, and relationships as a tool towards that,
Mm.
right? Relationships as the place where our ugliness comes out, where our judgment, our anger, the magnifying glass for ourselves. So the work that I do right now is that I help men have better relationships, starting with the relationship with themselves, and eventually, when they're ready, understand the deeper relationship with God, spirit, the creator, whatever you want to call it.
Awesome, man. It's interesting the way you described your journey, because it's in many ways it's similar to so many people I've worked with, and it's also very similar to mine. It's like this journey of like, you've noticed there's like some sort of void or some disconnection, but you don't know how to explain it, other than like you feel kind of left out and you feel like you're the odd one out of life. It's how it feels like in the beginning. And the search starts as like I need to have more, maybe I need to get more, so get more sex, get more money, get more friends, and then as that kind of dissolves and you've satisfied that, then it starts to become like this doing more. Like that's when you, like you said yourself, you transition into like, you went to Ars Samarata and you started having a better relationship with women, and you started doing more in your life. You started doing more coaching, you started having more relationships, and taking on more in your life. And then when that kind of satisfies itself and you realize like, oh shit, something still feels off, it transitions usually to that, well, who am I phase, like the beingness step, which I think is like it's an important gap that I think a lot of people get stuck in between, is that step between the having and doing, into like maybe putting that aside and starting to look like, oh man, who am I really? So it's an interesting journey. And it's also interesting that a lot of the guys that I work with also go into the pickup phase, because that's exactly what I did in my early 20s. I got the book The Game. I got David D'Angelo's Double Your Dating, like all the OG stuff. That's where actually I met. I got introduced to Xan back then as well, because he was in one of those videos, and I was like, oh my god, like I want to be just like this guy.
Uh-huh. Yeah, it's I totally agree. We as men go on the journey of wanting to have more, doing more, and the question of being more, right? More grounded, more embodied, more conscious. Um, there's I don't know if it is considered a step, but I feel that there comes a point when even that has to be renounced,
Mm.
because even the being more comes from a place of self-consciousness, where I'm still thinking too much about myself and disconnected from life, essentially. And I find that my journey the last couple of years has been in understanding that transition and helping people make that transition, because um, even if it's grounded in positive virtues, right? I want to be more aware. I want to be more conscious. I want to be more loving. I want to be more compassionate. Um, just the seeking itself comes from a place of not yet enough, right? But
Mhm.
at a very very subtle distinction, just like the guy who has a few million in the bank and still needs another one more business. Not yet enough, but here is in a very very subtle point, which is easy to get stuck into, because we feel happier and more joyful and more loving and experience more beauty in our lives. Um, and my personal experience is that ultimately even that has to be renounced. We can always chase more or have it all, and the only way to have it all is to give up the chase for more, to come
Mhm.
to a place where the moment is perfect, and that is a hard thing to explore or to even consider, because if there's nothing to chase, then what do I do? Do I just sit here and enjoy my life?
Yeah.
That is a concept and still one that I'm working on right now. Like, can I appreciate life in all of its texture, flavor, and myself in all of my virtues and flaws, without forcing, um, aching, or being attached to being any different, and 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 above all, let go the focus of my energy and efforts being one which is internal, to kind of put all that energy and attention on the life that is available to me right now, however simple it is. Because then, and there's a transition from being self-conscious to life conscious, because otherwise, and this was my case and the case of you've probably worked with a lot of men in this space, it's easy to turn ourselves into endless self-development projects.
Yeah.
More to do, whether it is more money, whether it is more stuff you can do, more women, more relationships, or whether it is very subtle. I can always be more embodied, I can always be more grounded, I can always be more loving. It's an endless project. There comes a point when we have to ask ourselves, like, can I stop seeing myself as something that needs to, like, to be worked on?
I totally agree. Actually, that's funny you say that. I think that's probably, I mean, if I'm being completely honest, that's actually like the phase that I'm personally in right now, is like you carry on this bag that you think you just have to keep healing this bag. And at some point, like there's a space where you're like, can I just like drop this bag actually, and just be okay with whatever I'm going through? Like maybe I just don't need any more healing. I could just maybe just be okay with what is, and just take a step back from like that idea that I need to heal everything. I need to do all this stuff, you know? It's yeah, and you're right, because like as you go deeper within yourself on the journey, the stuff that comes up, it does become more subtle, like the disconnections to life, the parts of you that are, you know, not aligned with your source. It becomes more subtle, more subtle, more subtle, and it's like you think you're like you're being everything, you're doing everything right, and then you like catch, you're like, oh fuck, I'm still compromising with myself, right? And it's very it can be very tricky at times.
Mm-hmm. And I think also something to mention is that I see this like a, you know, like a great musician, that every great musician must study the math behind music, right? The partitures, the way the chords are formed, the way that harmony plays out, resonance, whatever. Um, and there are incredible musicians who are well versed at reading music, writing music, set composing. But the final step is to let it all go, and in a way become channels for something greater, right? Free from the restrictions of a rigid structure. But they could not get to that point where they become a vessel for something deeper, higher, without having had that structure first, right? So in a way, it is very, very much needed, because it's easy for men that are really dysfunctional in the relationships to be like, oh, I don't need to work on myself. And it's like I like to connect to art a lot, because I feel that it in the symbolism and in the way that art is approached, we can learn a lot about life. And Picasso, once went to one of his museums in Spain, and I didn't know, like, some of his let's say older work or early work was very close to realism, hyper realism, like really, really detailed oil paintings. And I was surprised, because I thought that from the get-go he was doing the more representative, kind of abstract drawings. And then when I inquired into it, I understood that he felt like only when he can capture the moment as he sees it completely, he can let that go and now come back to the simplicity of drawing like a child, right? But not before he has mastered the capacity to draw it, quote unquote, perfectly. And I feel that's part of the journey of for men, and also the women that are watching this. Sure, to on one hand understand that there are things that we can improve to improve our experience of life, but ultimately there comes a point when it's been enough, where it's functional to a large degree, and what comes after that is maybe letting go of the rigid ideas, especially identities that we can carry, and allow for life to flow now through a body and a mind that have been um, cleansed, worked on, grounded.
Mm. Two things came up for me when you said all that. When you talk about like creating that structure and then letting like yourself become a vessel for that, you know, life's deeper energies to flow through you. That's to me sound like, you know, the masculine and feminine, right? You create this, you know, you master the structure, and then you're willing to like, you know, it's now a container for you, but you're now letting go of the rigidity of that and letting life flow through that container so that you can be guided by something a bit deeper within yourself, so your source. And I also think that's one thing that I think a lot of people think about is like, or experience, is that all of their learnings happen through pain, and that happens through suffering. And I think when that transition happens to when you become that vessel, that's where you get to start to learn life's lesson more from joy, right? By trusting, surrendering to the moment, following your fuck yes energy. Like that's kind of how I would call that. And you start to notice that like, when I listen to this or when I surrender to that, quite joyful, beautiful things come into my life, or some things happen in these unexpected, powerful ways that like are above and beyond what I could have ever expected. And that's when the transition happens to like learning more from the joy of life rather than the pains in life, you know?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, like I think life's pain is just the last resort it has at guiding us to a better place. In a way, I don't know, this may not be a good example or a good analogy, but you know, like the father that has a child and the child keeps running into traffic and it's like, no, don't do it, don't do it, don't do it. One point has to like grab and shake the child and be like, you know, like either don't do it or maybe just let, I mean, I don't know what parent will do this, but let the child
Let it run in there.
suffer the uglier consequences, and then the hospital be like, try telling you. So I think pain is life checking us before we crash in an uglier way,
Mm-hmm.
which, as you said, is not bad, but it's unnecessary. I feel that pain is used mostly when you want to condition behavior of animals, right? Reward and punishment, and it works great. Like I was hearing a podcast where you can train cats, you can train cockroaches to turn light bulbs on and off, like to walk on switches. And there's people who have figured out how to train all kinds of insects and animals to do stuff through reward and punishment. And sure, human beings, I think I would say 99% operate in the same way.
Yeah.
But when there's a bit more of consciousness, then it doesn't have to be like that. We don't have, you know, only a donkey needs to be like smacked and forced to go where he needs to go. We are human beings, but most people are, I feel, yeah, I think to a large degree, a lot of people still function out of compulsion, like animals. Just a lot of people, when I look out, I see just refined animals, or animals with refined communication capabilities and refined desires and aversions. But most of the people are really ruled by what they like and they dislike, and they live in a box of their own creation, the jail of their identity. And from that place, then, you know, life moves them through desires and pains. But when somebody steps out of that or learns to step out of it, then you understand that, as you said, movement, growth can come from a different place that has more ease, more joy, inspiration, right? To inspirar in Spanish means to inhale. It can also mean to inspire somebody, but inspiration is, you know, from the inwards breath, which is from life. You know, the sustenance of life. From that can come the movement. We don't have to be drowning and turning purple to decide, okay, maybe I should do things differently.
It's interesting. Like 6 months ago, I've been into Sadhguru for like a couple of years, but 6 months ago, like I finally leaped in and got some of his yoga programs because I had this like calling to like, expand my surrender work into more movement as well. So like I had just called to work with him. So I do a couple of his programs right now. And in one of the first things he said was, did you know that if the sun went out, that within 24 hours, the entire planet would essentially freeze over. Everything would die in 24 hours. He's like, so did you see the sun came up this morning? And I was like, yeah, it did. He's like, and she started just applauding. He's like, and then everyone started applauding in the video, right? And he's like, yeah, so realize that sun can just go out at any point, but it's on right now, and you're sustained by life right now just because of that one thing. And he's like, and so many of you are just stuck in your heads worrying about all this little nonsensical things when you're completely supported by life. And it was very like it was quite a nice analogy to like think about that just for a moment and ponder, like, that's true. Like, the trees are here, the sun is here, like I can live, I can breathe, I'm sustained by life right now. And like, I'm worried like this person didn't text me back, and like now I'm feeling like really needy and insecure, right? And it was quite funny to like think about it, taking a step back. And I don't even know why I even like brought that up for right now, but like I was gonna lead to something. It was the identities we hold on to. Most people, I mean, everybody has one part of their identity that's just like, I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough, right? What makes you feel like people are so tied to hold on to that thing? Why do people, do you think, hold on to that so tightly?
Because it's comfortable, it is known. Mostly that. I remember it was a couple of years ago, a friend sent me this, like a meme, it was a video of this woman in Mexico selling empanadas. I don't know if you know what empanadas are, but they're like these pastry, they're usually full of meat or potatoes, and they're very common in Latin America. And then she had a platter full of, let's say, 50 empanadas, and it was, I think, 6 in the morning. And she was walking uphill to try to sell them the middle of traffic. For those that haven't been to Latin America, here you can buy all kinds of things when you're waiting on a traffic light. Food, drinks, whatever. Sometimes there's circus shows. It's the ways in which people hustle to make a living, right? So she was walking with a tray full of empanadas, and then there's the guy that is recording the video, like the driver, and then the co-pilot, and the guy is telling her like, hey, how much for each empanada? And let's say 10 pesos, right? Let's say like whatever. He said, okay, so like give me all 50. And the woman is shocked. She's like, no, I can't. I just started my day of work. I'll give you like 4 or 5. He's like, no. Why don't you give me all 50 and then you go home and relax the rest of the day? She's like, no. I still, it's just 6 a.m. I still have to do the work, and I'll give you 5, like 6 maximum. The guy told her, I'll buy the 50 from you right now at 20 pesos each. I'll give you double for all of them if you give them to me right now. And you see that he's one of those old, like bulky, chubby, like Latin grandmas. And she's like, no, I can't. It's just 6 a.m. I just started my day. I still need to go and sell them,
Yeah.
And the guys they're laughing because I think the title of the meme was like, wow, it said like, me as an entrepreneur. And it was mocking the fact that this lady couldn't understand what to do with herself if she were to sell all of them at twice the price when her day just started. Like for her, she was so attached to doing the work, to working, that it was beyond her reality, and she couldn't compute the simple math.
Yeah.
I forwarded to a bunch of entrepreneurial friends, and I'm thinking like, wow, like what an idiot. How can you not see that? Hey, I'll sell them right now and I'll relax the rest of the day. And that day, at that time I was exploring with microdosing mushrooms.
Mm-hmm.
I stopped, but I decided to take some mushrooms before going to a floating tank, to a sensory deprivation tank, because somebody had recommended that. And I went, and then I started seeing in the trip that I was having, I saw this woman, and my first reaction was like laughing and judgment, and like how silly can you be, you know, to get it. And then the trip turned into like, hey, like this is what you're actually doing. And I'm like, what do you mean? And he was showing me how, you know, I need to be a better man, a better boyfriend, a better leader, etc., etc.
Mm-hmm.
Then I can be happy or at peace with myself. And life is already wanting to hand that to you, like for free. Like it's willing to give you way more fulfillment than you could get through endless working. But we're attached because we wouldn't know what to do, or in that case, the mushrooms were teaching me like, hey, you wouldn't know what to do with yourself if there was nothing to chase. If,
Yeah.
if the money that you thought you were going to make through all this work, if you could get double that right now, then what you will know what to do with yourself. And that's the reason you need to experience and live through this, because you can still allow yourself to receive fully. So the not being good enough, I think, is from that, is just we're very used and comfortable in our quest for being more, being better, that it's quite scary, because if I am good enough, what do I do with my self-development journey? What do I do with a lot of the, and most of our life is based on wanting more out of something, out of someone, and better expansion, which is natural. But what do I do when I feel good enough? Then it's scary. So I think first that we're addicted
The chase.
to the chase, to having to do more work. Yeah, and we don't know what we would do, and we usually feel that we wouldn't do much. If I felt good enough, then why would I bother doing anything? And it's quite, you know, I think Sadhguru shares this as well. It is when you're in a state of peace, completion, joy, and fulfillment that the best creations can come.
Yeah.
I think the actual, that's the only place where anybody should ever teach anything, because you're teaching from a place of excitement, because you just want to do it. It's an expression of your life. It's not an attachment towards some ultimate goal that is just real in our minds and never attainable.
Yeah, no, that's really well said. What's really interesting, the analogy used is quite good. I one of the things that's I found really interesting with this attachment to that identity is, you know, like it's like you said, the fear of the unknown, the fear of like, you know, what I do. I actually remember a client that I asked one time, like, if I took away your insecurities, like, is there resistance to me taking away your insecurities? And he said, yes. And I was like, what is the resistance? He's like, I think I would just be bored. And I was like, okay, you know, and I actually think like underlying, like, not only are people afraid of like the unknown, they're afraid to be bored and actually have nothing to do. Like they're afraid of that, like the nothingness. Like, well, who am I? What am I? If I don't have this, then what's left of me? What am I? You know? And that's an important question. I think every person, it's good to ask yourself, because that genuine inquiry will actually help you find that out and see that a lot of the nonsense that happens with us holding on to those identities and the fears and the shame is that we believe the thoughts that come with them. Like the thoughts are very seductive and they like convince us that like, oh, these feelings are true. And if you don't listen to me, you're going to get more of these feelings, essentially, you know, like it's like the mind fuck. It's like if you let me go, you're only going to get more of me. But in this moment right now, you're getting all that fear and shame and that resistance, you know? And this is like the process of like going from, and I look at growth as not so much like you're actually growing. To me, it's more like you're remembering like what's real and what's bullshit. And that's how I kind of view it these days now. You're not actually getting bigger, you're just remembering who you really are, right?
100%. There is, yeah, there's not, well, there's nothing we can really get from the outside, but there is a lot that can be expressed and released and freed up from the inside.
Mm-hmm.
Right. Yeah, recently in one of the most recent plant medicine retreats that I organized here in Colombia, I understood that, because I understood that anything that we ache for is within us, in perhaps dormant, but our job is not to gather stuff from the outside, from people, from mentors, but rather break away the walls, like the dam we have built in our own river of life force. But that's quite scary, because I feel that most people are not ready to. It will destroy the life they currently live if they became in touch with, or if they realized who they are in essence and what they're capable of. Because most of the lives that people live are predicated on their limitations, on their desires and their aversions, right? So I have this work because I like doing this, and I really don't like doing that, and I don't have a better job or a better relationship because I'm shy or self-conscious or whatever self-imposed limitation. But the moment that we realize, not as a thought, but as a lived, as an embodied experience, the moment that we understand that whatever we choose, whatever we want to create can unfold in a way that requires very little friction, then that sets the question of, okay, if I could literally, if I could, if I believed 100% with every cell of my body that I can create every part of my reality as I wish it to be, what would stay and what will I let go of? And for most people, what will be renounced will be most of it.
Yeah.
Their job, their relationships, their friendships. Um, this is something that happens quite often when people drink plant medicine. If they're ready, sometimes they come back and they realize that the person they were married to was not. It was based mostly out of dysfunction.
Mm-hmm.
When the dysfunction within them was healed, was processed, they come back and they realize, wow, this person is quite ugly, and this relationship is quite unhealthy, and this is not my home anymore. Same with work, same with a lot of stuff. But it's scary because we grow comfortable within our own misery, right? It is our misery, and it's known. There's no mystery within it, even if it's painful. It's familiar, and that is maybe the biggest challenge that men or people in general face today, and is that can I abandon the comfort of the familiar and trust the mystery, right? Trust that what may unfold if I free myself is 1,000 times better than what I could have forced through my own limitations.
No, that's we're really well said. One last question I have for you before we wrap up. We've talked about letting go a lot, surrender, processing and healing, and I think this word gets thrown around a lot, like the healing stuff, right? And for me, when I first got into this, I actually didn't understand it. I learned what letting go was, but I didn't experientially get it until you get it, like you experience it yourself. You're like, oh shit, that's what it is. For those watching that maybe are very new to this space, like, how would you describe healing? How would you describe what letting go actually is that might help them get a better grasp of it or get like a better understanding of what that would look like for them?
So the first thing is, maybe it's important to describe what it is not. Letting go is not ignoring, is not bypassing, is not distracting yourself with something else. Letting go is not becoming full of other stuff, activities, hobbies, practices. Letting go, what has to be let go is not the difficult emotion or the difficult situation, but the resistance we have to experiencing it fully. Right? One of my students recently, during one of the ceremonies, he came to me and he said that it was really difficult. He said, I kept feeling this pain in my stomach and I just wanted it to end, and I didn't have any visions or any insights. It was just, I just felt pain and physical discomfort. And I asked him, did you, okay, I asked him, it seems like you were very uncomfortable with the pain you were feeling and you wanted it to end. He said, yes. And I said, do you give yourself a chance to look into it, to allow yourself to look deeper into it, to let go of the resistance to that pain and just put all of your attention into that area, into that place, and see what came up? And he was shocked. He said, no, but the next ceremony I will explore that. And he did, and he was a catalyst for massive healing. And it was because it is the resistance which creates pain and suffering and a lot of chaos around us. It's not what's happening, it's the resistance to what is happening. And for me to let go, let's say if I'm going through a breakup and I want to let go of that person, it's not about blocking them and deleting all the pictures from my phone and never talking to them and starting to date some other women and distract myself with work. And no, those may be things that add a little bit to the process of moving on. But personally, if I want to let go of something that was painful, the fastest way is to allow myself to feel all of it, because the pain is nothing but a message, perhaps an uncomfortable one. But until I receive all of the message, the messenger is not going to go away. And I cannot receive it if I'm numbing myself, whether it's through drugs, through work, through working out, through even spiritual practices. Very often people use them as a way to avoid dealing with their reality. And to let go means that you let go of the resistance towards what you're feeling and you go deeper into it. You go deeper into the pain, the discomfort, the judgment, the grief, the sadness, the frustration. Because only when we feel it fully, then we understand the role that it was meant to serve. We understand the lesson, the message that it carried. Once you have cried your tears, there's no more to cry. But if you haven't, then they're just gonna pile up, right? Like, how do I let go of a wound if I cut myself? Never by ignoring it. It's gonna get infected. And the longer I ignore it, maybe eventually I have to chop my whole arm off if it's quite serious. To let go, I need to let go of my compulsion to resist that pain, to want to look away from that pain, which means I'm going to look, where did I cut myself? How deep is the wound? I'm going to put alcohol in it and it's going to hurt more, right? But that's the process of healing. That, wow, actually, by feeling how painful it was, I may understand. Next time I'm chopping wood or cooking, I'll be more mindful. Or maybe I understand that I cut myself right after I argued with my partner, and I understand how I'm literally hurting myself when I carry resentment, for example, right? Like the body is very wise, so is the heart. But we close ourselves to its wisdom when we are unable to let go of our resistance to that which is uncomfortable. So to wrap it all up, letting go in relationship to healing comes when you let go of your resistance to the experience you are having. It's not letting go of the emotion that you're having. The emotion is going to go on its own. It's like a child that came to you and is saying that something hurts. Only until you pay attention to that child and have a conversation with him or with her, then the child will feel at peace and go on its own, back to play. But if you ignore a child that is in pain, he's going to start throwing fits and he's going to get violent. It's going to turn quite ugly because he needs or she needs to be heard. So, uh, yeah, next time that for those of you watching that you feel you need to let go of something, ask yourself, are you wanting to let go of the experience that life is serving you right now? Because if that's the case, you're bound to end up in a lot more pain or in the same experience with different characters. The letting go that has to happen is the letting go of your resistance to what is happening. And you see that as you, instead of rejecting, you dive deeper into that which you're afraid of. That's the only way through. That's the only way forward, which is true. You dive deeper into it, and it doesn't take too long once that is done. And healing comes as a result of understanding that there was nothing to be afraid of, there was nothing to resist, and you were fine. And now you're a little bit more wise. I think that's the moment when healing happens, when you understand, wow, when you can have gratitude for that which was painful or that which you were blaming, and you know, one day you damn it, the next day you thank it. I think that's when healing has happened. But the thanking it can never come if we ignore it or if we distract ourselves from it.
Beautiful. You know, it's interesting. There's a Rumi quote, and he says, "The medicine to your pain is inside the pain." And so it's quite well said. It's letting go is actually just more of an allowing process. It's just allowing what is, allowing your experience to unfold. So and looking at it with honest eyes. Nico, I really appreciate you joining me for the call, man. I appreciate all the wisdom you dropped. If someone's watching this and was curious about working with you or attending one of your plant medicine retreats, what would be the best way that they can get in contact with you to schedule a call and see if that's a fit for them?
So right now, I'm not really offering much because I'm working on writing my book, but I share a lot of content almost daily on Facebook and Instagram. Facebook, you can find me by Nicolas without H, Canon, Canon, or on Instagram at Nico Canon, NicoCanon, and underscore. And there I post, I think daily, a couple of times a day, a lot of reflections, insights, behind the scenes stuff about plant medicine. So yeah, and then whenever I'm offering something, usually I announce it over there.
Awesome, man. I'll tag both your Facebook and Instagram when I comment and post this on YouTube and Facebook, so everyone can find you. And I don't know if you wanted to drop a plug about your book. Do you have like a timeline of when that's going to be released, or any insights you want to share, or are you keeping it kind of secret?
So about the book, the name of the book is going to be Grace. And for a lot of people, this sounds religious, but it's quite practical. It's going to be coming out fall of 2022, if all goes well, but that's the plan. And it's a book actually very connected to what we just talked about, which is, I think a person's life becomes very grounded in peace and eventually in bliss the moment that we understand that there's no difference between suffering and grace, between pain and grace, and the moment that we can look at every difficult situation as a gift from life itself, not from our minds, but physically we relate to it as such, then there's no negative situation, there's no ugly moments, there's just, there's beautiful experiences to celebrate and interesting ones to learn from. In that moment, then peace is something that can never be taken away from you, not by anything that happens outside of you. So the book is a journey around that. How do we make peace with the pain we have felt, to the point that we can eventually look at it with love and appreciation? That's the journey. Yeah, 2022 fall. And also, for those watching this on YouTube, I have a YouTube channel called Ayahuasca Colombia, where if you're curious about plant medicine, I share interesting stuff over there.
Cool. I'll also tag that as well so people can find you there. Nico, thanks so much, man. I really enjoyed having you on, connecting with you. You got a wonderful presence and a lot of wisdom to share. Guys, check out Nico's Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube, and look out for his book about 1 year from now. Thanks so much, brother. Really enjoyed having you, man.
Thank you, Rus. It's been a pleasure.
All right, guys. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll catch you guys next time. Peace.